In the ever-evolving world of PC gaming, the cycle of generational upgrades is constant. And for many, the sweet spot for a new graphics card isn't about chasing the highest frame rates at 4K, but rather finding the best performance uplift for a reasonable price. Well, that's precisely where we're focusing our attention today, as we're putting AMD's latest mainstream offering, the RX 9060 XT, directly against its natural predecessor, the 7600 XT. This isn't just a battle of raw power, but a crucial look at generational improvements and, of course, value. Now, the 7600 XT launched back in early 2024 at a price point of $329, aiming to deliver solid 1080p and entry-level 1440p gaming. Fast forward to today, and its successor, the 9060 XT, arrives with a slight price bump, coming in at $349 at launch, just $20 more than its older sibling. This incremental increase immediately begs a question though. Does that small jump in cost deliver a genuinely meaningful boost in performance and features for the next generation of AMD's mainstream GPUs? Well, this head-to-head will dissect just how much has changed in terms of performance going from RDNA 3 to RDNA 4 in this segment, and we'll examine if the RX 9060 XT offers enough of a leap forward to justify that slightly higher investment, providing a clear picture for anyone looking to upgrade or build a new budget-friendly system. But before we get into that, here's a quick word from this video sponsor.
This sucks. I wish I had an upgrade.
You have summoned the gaming genie. What is your wish?
Better gear? For an upgrade?
Your wish is my command. Zone Elite XL Matte, smooth, comfortable, spill resistant, and the sleek Zone Mat for precision gaming. NZXT Function Elite Mini TKL, magnetic switches, compact and precise. Featuring per-key adjustable actuation with 40 points of sensitivity ranging from 0.6mm to 4mm to fit your individual needs. Lift Elite wireless mouse, lightweight, responsive and ultra-fast. Capsule Elite mic, pro quality audio, crystal clear, every game chat will be flawless. Genie approved upgrades. Make your gaming wishes come true with NZXT. Find out more by clicking the link in the description below. So beyond the price, what exactly are you getting for that extra $20? Well, the 9060 XT builds upon the foundation of its predecessor with architectural refinements and, well, on paper, not much else. While we do see a jump from TSMC's 6nm process node now to 4nm, the texture mapping units, the ROPs, the compute units, the RT cores and even the L3 cache all stay the same, though we do see the L2 cache double in size to 4 megabytes, so nothing of significance. They even use the same 16GB of GDDR6 on a 128-bit bus, though the bandwidth is increased slightly on the RDNA 4 counterpart. But even when drilling into the clock speeds, the 7600 XT features a higher base clock, while the 9060 XT offers up a higher game clock, boost clock, and memory clock. But we can't be led to believe that it's all about clock speed, can we? Of course not. Improvements go beyond that, and that's what we'll be looking at today. But one of the key points, as I alluded to earlier, is price. While the 7600 XT launched at $329, the 9060 XT's $349 price tag represents a 6.1% increase in cost. So will the newer card give us a 6% increase in performance? Because while that would be perfectly fine, it doesn't offer up much for those wanting to upgrade. And instead, we want to see much bigger generational uplifts to warrant that incremental expense. To find out exactly what level of performance increase is on the table, we've thrown both cards at 30 different games across 3 different resolutions to get a complete picture of which one performs the best. And we'll take a look at around 10 individual games here today before we then delve into the percentage differences at all 30 games. To assess these graphics cards, we ran them on our dedicated GPU test bench, and this system is powered by an AMD Ryzen 7 9800X3D processor installed on a Gigabyte B650E or a Master motherboard, and features 32GB of Corsair Vengeance RGB, 6000MHz CL30 dual-channel memory. All testing was performed on Windows 11 with the latest updates and the most recent motherboard BIOS, along with the latest AMD Adrenalin driver. Our testing included all 3 resolutions, though we will primarily kind of focus on 1080p and 1440p, as that is where the main target resolutions for these cards actually are. We also included the 4K data to provide a complete overview, noting that, well, for some games, you might be able to achieve playable frame rates even at that resolution. For access to all of our detailed charts across every game though, please visit our Patreon where this data is exclusively available to our supporters. The link is, as always, down below. So, with that out of the way, let's get into those glorious benchmarks. So starting things off with a Plague Tale, and at 1080p we see a healthy 42% uplift. There's also a stronger 45% increase at 1440p and a pretty staggering 65% increase in performance at 4K, which now puts this game into a more playable state and shows that the newer RDNA 4 architecture has some sizable generational improvements. In Alan Wake 2, the generational gains are impressive, with 43% faster performance at 1080p. 1440p improves on that further, with a 51% increase in frames, and 4K sees strong generational improvements with the latest RDNA 4-based GPU hitting 58%, and putting it again into a situation where you could argue that it's at least playable now, though at 30 FPS, I'd advise harnessing upscaling as some form in this title. When we enable ray tracing, the gains moving up to the latest AMD offerings show our best results yet, with 78% more frames at 1080p, 76% more at 1440p, and 86% faster performance at 4K. 1080p and 1440p now put this game into the realms of a playable experience, but 4K just misses the mark, and again I'd advise to either dial down the settings slightly or go harder on the level of upscaling that's needed. Switching over to Baldur's Gate 3, and the uplifts at each resolution come in very similar, between 21 to 23%, depending on if you're playing at 1080, 1440 or 4K. While the uplifts aren't as big as what we've seen in other games, it still puts the performance in a much more favourable position, as even with the lows, we're well above 30 FPS. Though for a card that's not aimed at 4K, it's still a welcomed increase in performance that will lead to a more enjoyable experience overall. In Black Myth Wukong, the 7600 XT struggled to hit 60 FPS at any resolution, while the 9060 XT managed to surpass that at 1080p with ease, coming in at 72 frames per second, and 1% lows that barely missed the mark. While 1440p and 4K come in much lower, but again, it's nothing that upscaling won't be able to fix, while still maintaining strong visuals, while the 7600 XT may struggle in newer titles like this even with upscaling without taking a hit on visual fidelity. While no one will be upset playing a game at over 100 FPS or even above 300 frames per second, Counter-Strike 2 players are always frame chasing, and getting the most out of their GPU can be the difference between getting the kill or being killed. And the 9060 XT improves on that further by increasing the performance between 21 to 23% depending on the resolution. So not the biggest gains that we've seen, but at 469 FPS, I don't think anyone would grumble too much. In Cyberpunk, we see a sizable uplift of 63% at 1080p, now pushing well over 100 frames per second, while 1440p now manages to see this game playable at over 60 FPS, which is that magic number that a lot of gamers hope for, with 1% low figures sitting just below and a generational uplift of 36%. 4K will need upscaling to help push those numbers up, but still sees a strong 45% increase in performance generation to generation. Enabling ray tracing again shows that AMD have been hard at work bringing performance much more in line with the competition, and it's here where at 1080p we see an increase in frames to the tune of 118%. While 37 FPS won't give you the best experience, it's a definite improvement over what the 7600 XT saw, and at least it's what I'd class as salvageable. The same can be said for the 1440p result, with upscaling or dialing down the settings, while 4K on both cards is just, in my opinion, simply out of reach. While tweaking the settings and utilising FSR could save it, this isn't really where you'd want to be on these calibre of cards. Moving over to Indiana Jones, and again we have some strong figures coming out of the new RDNA 4-based 9060 XT. At 1080p, the generational improvements come by the way of a 41% increase in frames, while 1440p improves on that further at 48%, which now puts us over 60 FPS, something that the 7600 XT could only achieve at 1080. Then 4K now sees us hitting above 30 frames per second, with room to tweak settings and upscaling to improve on that further. Then lastly, in Starfield, there's a strong generational uplift again, with 1080p pushing out 39% more performance in comparison to the older 7600 XT. 1440p improves on that further still with a 42% improvement, again now pushing performance over 60, and 4K sees a 48% increase in frames, moving from the 7600 XT to the 9060 XT, which considering it's launched at $20 more, seems worth it in comparison. So it's looking good for the 9060 XT, as in the 10 games shown, it demonstrates a solid uplift gen on gen across most games, with obviously a few exceptions where there's still increases, but maybe not by the margin that most gamers would actually want. Thankfully, as we look at the percentage differences across all 30 games, we see a clear 54% average increase at 1080p, with the strongest uplifts in performance coming by the way of ray tracing titles like Black Myth Wukong, Cyberpunk and Spider-Man 2, to name a few. Of those particular titles, we saw anywhere up to a 127% increase in performance, moving from RDNA 3 to RDNA 4, while the lowest increase we saw was from Baldur's Gate 3 at just 21%. But if arguing about the all-important price, it still leaps and bounds over the 6% increase in money, though I'm more than aware that there's more to it than that. In terms of the lows, things are again very strong, with a 55% increase in terms of generational uplifts. Again, with the biggest increase coming by way of ray trace-based titles. Though most titles gave us a 40% increase or above, which is pretty impressive considering on paper, both cards look very similar. As we move up to 1440p, it's very much the same story, this time with a 57% generational improvement, again with ray tracing games seeing the strongest increments, and then tapering off from there. Though again, the majority of the games saw a 40% improvement or higher, and the lowest again coming in at 21%, this time by the way of Counter-Strike 2. Again, looking at the lows, this time the improvement gains even more ground, with 60% faster performance on average, and as no surprise, ray tracing titles lead the way. And the lowest again, being Baldur's Gate 3, comes in with a 21% improvement from the 7600 XT. While strictly not aimed at 4K, it's clear to see that if we increase the resolution, the improvements get even stronger, with a 65% lead over its predecessor, with the biggest improvement coming from Spider-Man 2 with RT enabled, with 178% faster performance, followed closely by other ray tracing based games. The lowest improvement again was from Baldur's Gate 3 at 23%, matching the same increase as Counter-Strike 2, while other games saw a 37% improvement or higher. Then, in the lows, it's no surprise to see consistently better performance, now with an average of the 9060 XT coming in 72% faster overall. And without sounding like a broken record, the games with ray tracing enabled saw the largest gains, showing that AMD are serious about improving their RT performance from what it was in the last generation. Now, obviously, performance is one thing, but power and temps come into it as well. And in terms of power, the 7600 XT comes out with an average power draw of 169 watts, while the 9060 XT consumes just below 6% more power, averaging 179 watts. Now, the caveat there is that we are using a Nitro Plus model, which does have a slightly higher power limit of 180 watts, so it's comfortably hitting that in a trade-off for more raw performance in games. Now, there are some notable differences in certain games where the disparity is much larger, like in Alan Wake 2 with RT enabled, where the 9060 XT used around 27 watts more during our run. But that's also expected given the large uplift in ray tracing performance that we saw on that card. Though that's not to say that the 7600 XT didn't use more power in places, like in Cyberpunk with RT enabled, where it used 8 watts more during our run as it tried to eke out every last drop of performance. Then, when it comes to the temperatures, the 9060 XT came in the cooler of the two overall, averaging 49 degrees compared to the 58 degrees on the 7600 XT. The difference here is quite significant and shows that the newer 4nm base GPU is more efficient in terms of temperatures, but also could lead to our Nitro Plus model just being better in the cooling department too. Again, there are some standout figures like Black Myth Wukong with RT enabled, where we're separated by 11 degrees in favour of the new card. Though some results are much closer, like Dying Light 2 with ray tracing enabled, where the 9060 XT still comes out cooler, but only by a margin of 3 degrees. And that's why it's always good to get a larger pool of data, as it can be more consistent and just give a bigger, better picture. So after putting these two cards through their paces, it's pretty compelling that the RX 9060 XT represents a genuinely monumental leap over its predecessor. Across our extensive 30-game test suite, the generational performance uplifts were consistent and impressive. At 1080, the 9060 XT delivered an average of 54% faster performance than the 7600 XT, a margin that then grew to 57% at 1440p and an even more staggering 65% at 4K. These figures weren't just seen in the average frame rates though. The 1% lows also saw substantial gains, ensuring a far smoother and more consistent gaming experience that truly increases the playability on modern titles. When you consider that the RX 9060 XT launched just over a year on, at just $20 more than the RX 7600 XT did, amounting to only a roughly 6% increase in price, the raw performance increase is in franc terms massive for your money, offering exceptional value that, in my opinion, just far outstrips the minor investment. What truly sets the 9060 XT apart this generation beyond the raw frame rate bumps is AMD's evident attention to ray tracing performance. We saw huge improvements in RT-enabled titles like Alan Wake 2, Cyberpunk and Spider-Man 2, with generational gains often pushing past 70%, and in some cases actually pushing well over 100%. This leap means that previously unplayable ray trace scenarios on the 7600 XT now become genuinely salvageable or even enjoyable on the 9060 XT, firmly positioning AMD as a more serious contender in this space. Furthermore, while the 9060 XT draws slightly more power on average compared to the predecessor, the performance per watt has clearly seen a significant boost given the much more efficient architecture. Adding to its accolades, the 9060 XT runs notably cooler, averaging 49 degrees compared to 58 degrees. And this cooler operation, likely thanks to the new 4nm processor and a well-designed cooler, is a significant quality of life improvement for those long and sustained gaming sessions. Ultimately, if I wanted to break it down, the RX 9060 XT comes in as one of the best generational uplifts we've seen in a while. And to me, comes across as a great option for anyone looking to build a new mainstream gaming PC without breaking the bank. If you're currently sporting an RX 7600 XT or even an older generation card, this is a worthwhile upgrade. And it feels good being able to say that, as historically, we've just not seen that happen too often from one generation to the next. And yeah, that's going to wrap up this head-to-head. If you enjoyed this video, then a like and a sub to the channel would be amazing. Also, if you love what we do and want to see all of the detailed charts for every game tested, you can by joining the super special Patreon club, where you also get access to a ton of other cool exclusive benefits. The link for all that good stuff is, as always, down below. Thanks for tuning in. I'll see you in the next one. See you later, guys. Bye-bye.